As the saying goes, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Tonight, learn how to manage your stress before it manages you. Sounds like a good idea to me. A panel of experts takes your questions about stress reduction next on Speak Your Mind. Welcome to Speak Your Mind. I'm Dr. Carolyn Phelps, licensed psychologist with the Human Development Center. And tonight we're taking your questions on stress and mental health. Now you should be well rested because it's been 3 weeks since we've been together here. And as always, we depend on your questions to keep this conversation going. See, I've been off for 3 weeks and look, I can't talk. And so I'm really going to need your help. So start calling those numbers on your screen right now. Locally, dial 218-788-2844 or call toll-free at 1-877-307-8762. And you can also text us your questions or email them using the number or address listed at the bottom of your screen. We're going to start by introducing our guests. Karen Alseth continues to teach in the mindfulness-based stress reduction program after retiring from St. Mary's Hospital, where she served in a variety of capacities for over 40 years. Karen describes her involvement in that program to have been her most fulfilling opportunity and profoundly helpful in her own personal growth. And Jim Youngman is a licensed psychologist and director of clinical services at the Human Development Center's Carlton County office. For over 30 years, he's helped people with many different kinds of mental health issues and is a frequent public speaker on being mentally healthy. Thanks to both of you for coming out and taking time out of your busy schedules in this sort of stressful holiday season. And I think this is truly, this is the perfect time to be doing this show. And that's thanks to our program director here, Julie Kellner. She's a smart girl, figured out when to have this show on stress and stress reduction and living a mentally healthy lifestyle. And I think the audience knows that I always like to start by just defining and getting everybody on the same page. And let's start by defining exactly what is stress. And I think I'll start with you, Karen.
Well, you know, you could get really technical about it neurophysiologically, the brain and the body. But basically, it's what happens in our mind and in our body when we feel that something is happening that is really difficult. It's just an awful lot to cope with. That's probably a very basic definition of stress.
So there's an emotional side of stress, and then there's a physiological side
absolutely.
of stress.
Yes, there's a mental, emotional, and physiological.
And what else might you have to add to that, Jim?
I'd like to talk about the stress situation that often triggers what Karen's talked about. To me, stress is change, any change that takes place, for good or bad in our situation. Taking a new job, for example, can be a good thing in one's life, but it's stressful too. Taking a vacation, any change in our life. I like to think of the stress situation fundamentally as, well, you remember those old westerns where there was always a train going over a high trestle bridge, and old Tom Mix and Roy Rogers movies. Nobody remembers those anymore except me.
I think you're dating yourself.
Yeah. Yes, I am. But to me, the train is like the stress load. It's various cars loaded with various types of stress, different weights, and the bridge is like our ability to bear up under the stress. It's our sense of humor, our sense of perspective, our faith, our ego strength. And so we have ourselves bearing up under the load and the stress load bearing down on it. That being the stress situation, socially or psychologically.
Might also add to that Jim mentioned change. Another way to look at stress is that it's when life puts a demand on us. Life is demanding us to do something, and we might be feeling that that's a little difficult. And change is often that way for many people, because change usually means we have to make some adjustments or we have to learn something new, and that's a demand.
And feeling that demand sometimes, especially with change, we can question ourselves as to whether or not we're up to the task.
Yes.
Then.
See, and that's probably the next or the last component of stress. It's when we feel that the change or the demand that's being asked of us is more than what we can cope with. And then we actually make it worse by telling ourselves, I can't do this, I can't do this.
I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah, I'm overwhelmed, this is too much, I'll never be able to do this. And so unknowingly, very innocently, we make the situation worse.
We do often, and by just telling ourselves in these different ways how we cannot cope with the situation,
exactly.
right? Instead of calling upon ourselves and reminding ourselves of the skills that we might have actually to cope in a new situation.
Right. One of the classic definitions is that the stress management wisdom is that it's not so much what happens to you in life, it's your thoughts and perceptions about it and your reactions to it.
Or said a different way, that whole concept that life is 10% circumstance and 90% what you make of the circumstance. And I think we know that because the exact same situation will be perceived differently by different people, right? Some people will find that overwhelming, and other people will find it maybe mildly stressful or moderately stressful.
Absolutely.
Let's talk some about where the sources of stress are coming from often for people in today's world, and what they're being, Jim, where people are being most stressed in their life and what contributes to that.
Sure. What we're finding at HDC and Cloquet, and I think throughout the mental health industry, is a lot of economic stress for people over the last couple of years. We're told that the economic situation is getting better here and there, but people don't see it locally, and they don't see it in their personal lives. And especially at a time like this, we approach the Christmas season, there's less money for things, but it's showing in personal stress. It's showing in increased numbers of depressed people that are referred to us. It's showing, unfortunately, in domestic violence situations, violence at work, or almost violence at work. So it's creeping out of the woodwork. There's a lot of pressure on people these days, and I would say that the economy is a huge, maybe not the only, but it's a huge driver right now.
So that's an external stressor. I think another external stressor would be just the different roles that people have in their life as well, and shifting from role to role. Whether you're in one role, you may be an employee, and then you come home and you're a wife, and you turn around and there are 3 kids and you're a mother too, and managing and negotiating all of those roles can often be stressful because they can have competing demands. What do you have to say?
I agree with that, and I think then at Christmas everything gets magnified, because it's not just women, but I think women especially are feeling the responsibilities of Christmas, getting ready for Christmas, the house cleaned, the decorations up, the cookies made, the kids' programs, and all of those things. So there certainly is a potential for stress to be greatly magnified in this season. And then when you add to it the economic, worries, how am I going to buy Christmas presents even if I don't have the money? But I think there we can look at one thing that will decrease the stress is the ability to look at your situation realistically and set your goals realistically and set your expectations to fit the situation you're in.
Which I think is excellent, and so if we're talking maybe at the holiday season and we're talking about being realistic, maybe that also means about being realistic about what you are going to spend then.
Yes.
And taking a look at, there's a difference between what all your kids want for Christmas, and that doesn't mean you have to buy them everything that they want.
Right.
So the notion of expectations, and I think that truly transcends even though the holiday season, right? That our expectations about what a job can and should do for us, or our expectations about what other people can and should do do for us. Talk a little bit about that, how people get themselves tripped up in that area, Jim.
I like to think that there should be an 80% rule, Carolyn. If you get 80% of your expectations, you're doing fantastic.
I like that.
You know, whether it's a new job, whether it's what you expect to get from your vacation, just anything that you're looking forward to. If you get 80% of your dreams or what you're hoping for, you should be very, very satisfied. I have this little law, I guess I call it Youngman's Law. The way things are going to turn out is halfway between the best you hope for and the worst you fear. And it is true again and again. I want to piggyback a little bit on what you said earlier, Karen, about the stress situation often making us feel that there's a challenge and we're not good enough. And that applies so broadly, but especially at this season, when we walk through places where there's all this glitzy, glittery stuff that's so expensive, and our kids have all these expectations, and we wonder, do I have the money, or is my neighbor able to give their children better things than I can? And we're bombarded with the message, you deserve this, you must have this. And don't get me wrong, I love the Christmas season and so many aspects of it, but it does add to that sense of, am I good enough? Am I rich enough to really, you know, come up to the mark?
Yeah, and the shoulds and the shouldn'ts, you know, if you take on these shoulds from the media and from the culture that I should be giving my children all of these things or whatever. So what is it that you believe about this season, and what do you believe about what your children should or shouldn't receive, or that you're able to do?
I love that concept of identifying number one, what your values are, and what you value in terms of what's important to you for this holiday season, what's important for you to celebrate, and then take that, not relying on the advertisement from television or what you're getting in the flyers you're getting in the Sunday paper, and making that the way in which you celebrate. I know a family that where the whole extended family gets together, and every year they choose a charity. They don't give gifts to each other. They choose a charity to donate because that's part of their family. That's part of their family values. We have a question here from Lisa in Duluth. This is taking a little bit of a left turn, but obviously related. Does stress trigger a genetic predisposition for heart attacks? And you spent many years as a nurse, so I'm going to turn that question over to you.
Stress is implicated in many illnesses and many forms of illness, but I don't think we've been able to prove yet an absolute direct link. Stress seems to worsen many conditions. It can trigger the onset of diabetes. We think, you know, from what is it that causes you one week not to have diabetes and the next week you do. It's a possibility that stress is involved there, but we can't say an absolute direct link.
And I think some of the research, I know certainly with mental health conditions, it's that concept of nature and nurture acting together, of biology, our body and mind sort of interacting with each other.
Yeah. We do think in the medical field that a continuously high level of cortisol, the stress hormone in the bloodstream, over a period of time, it's implicated in a decline of the immune system. It is implicated in a number of things. So it's not to be disregarded. You know, the significance of stress and the effect of continuous stress on the body really should not be underplayed either.
And I think that's also where we see some of the concerns for people for our soldiers who are either deployed for long periods of time and are exposed to chronic levels of high stress, or who are redeployed and redeployed and redeployed, which is what we had been seeing, which is what we've been seeing in these conflicts in the last 10 years, with that multiple redeployment and that multiple high level of stress and activation, even with the proper training.
And being unable to turn it off once
Right.
at home
Yeah.
between deployments.
Yeah.
This is becoming a problem better known to the public and to the medical profession. A person who is used to being at a high level of surveillance and feeling that his person and those around him are in constant danger brings that back home, and as a result, this results in overprotectiveness of the children. Can't stand to see them standing out at the bus stop like you have for years, but now it's different. Yeah, we see a good deal of that stress being carried over even when the real threat is gone.
It's stress on a whole different level, PTSD,
Yep.
and I'm just glad that now our medical profession is recognizing it and seeing it as a very real thing and is starting to treat it.
Absolutely, and there are many resources.
Yes.
There are many resources.
Yes.
So let's start a little bit about talking about stress reduction then, and leading. So we've talked about stress. We've gotten everybody hyped up now. It's like, let's calm it down. And I want to hear, Karen, explain the teachings that you do through the mindfulness-based stress reduction program. And I think, here we go defining again, but a good place to start is even, I think some people don't even understand the concept of the word mindfulness.
It took me a while to get my arms around the concept of mindfulness and then to actually see it playing out in my life. And there are a lot of different definitions, but what it is, I think, in its simplest notion is the ability to be fully engaged in this moment with awareness of what I'm thinking, of what I'm feeling, of where I am and what I'm doing, and the immediate environment also, to be fully engaged in the present moment, or in this case we might say this half hour of this program, to really be here and fully here and not in the past somewhere or not out in the future somewhere, not thinking about what am I going to do after the program's over or what am I going to do tomorrow, but fully engaged with what is happening here.
And the benefit of being able to do that is?
Well, you know, the benefit of being able to do it, I think two of the essentials of stress management are awareness and clarity. And look at how they play into the Christmas season. Look at how they play into our whole lives. If I'm aware of where I am, who I am, what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling right now, then I have some clarity. And that clarity then allows me to make wiser choices, more skillful choices about what I'm going to do next, or is there something I need to change in the way I'm preparing for Christmas or whatever.
I love what you just said about that clarity, because it's often that we really do know what to do, but that we're so rush, not in the moment, that we can't access that knowledge.
We can access it, but sometimes we just get on this, like on this treadmill of stress. And the more stressed we become, the less able we are to access clarity. And so what we teach in the mindfulness program is just this simple technique or strategy, if you will, of going to the breath. That in any moment, I can access my breath. I can pay attention to my breathing. I can make sure that I'm breathing fully. Then what happens is the clarity probably comes through. We calm down. It's like recalibrating the brain. We're getting more oxygen up to the brain, and we're recalibrating actually the parts of the brain that help us calm down and that help us see clearly and that help us make wise decisions. So to give an example, for example, with Christmas and tying it in with the economic situation, if in a moment of clarity I see exactly what my family's financial situation is right now and how much money I realistically can spend on each of the children, I see it in this moment of clarity, then maybe I can make a skillful decision about what to do next. Maybe what I need to do next is talk to the kids and just be honest with them and say, this Christmas is going to be a little different. We don't have as much money this year. And so the clarity of the moment leads to hopefully a more clear, a wiser decision of what to do.
That's absolutely excellent. And even when you're talking and you're saying, let's talk a minute about the breath, I found myself taking a nice deep breath in, and you can just feel it, right?
Yeah.
Right. You can see the teacher in Karen, all of you. I hope you were taking that nice deep breath too, because it's good for you, not just for me.
Could I say one more thing, Carolyn, about the breath? One of the things I didn't know until I started having some training in stress management, and that was that when we start getting stressed, and we can define that as angry, fearful, anxious, frustrated, you know, overwhelmed with the season or whatever, what we tend to do in those moments of overwhelm is we actually start to breathe from the top third of our lungs. We breathe shallowly, or we hold our breath. And what happens when we breathe shallowly or hold our breath is that we actually activate the stress response in the brain. And it's powerful, and it just like takes us into Stressville.
So without knowing it, we're making the situation
worse. Yes,
worse.
without knowing it, we're making it worse. And so we've got to recognize that by going to the breath and kind of like pressing that pause button.
Jim, let's talk about leading a mentally healthy lifestyle here. You have a whole system.
I have a system, Carolyn, so one that I've followed for a number of years, and I've found it most useful for myself and with my clients as well. And I'm pleased to share this with them because it's something that is so simple, so direct, and it works so well when you pay attention to it.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. 4 aspects of the mentally healthy lifestyle. First of all is tone, taking care of the physical self. And to me, that means regular exercise, proper diet, good sleep, and risk management. I was once at a seminar where the keynote speaker, an eminent psychiatrist, said that if he could put regular exercise and a nutritious diet into a pill, it would be the most prescribed psychiatric in the world. And I believe that to be true. So after we take care of the physical self, we need to take care of the social self. We need connectedness along with tone. And this means making sure that we have maintained our social relationships with family, with friends, that we have some sort of connection with the outside world. I think of this in terms of almost like an archery target, with each ring being more intimate as we go in. On the outside are our acquaintances, those we know at work or at school. Every once in a while we find someone there and we graduate them into the next circle, which is friends, people who are for fun, who we're comfortable with, and then sometimes we find a special friend that we graduate into the circle of what we could call our confidants. We have 1 or 2 of these people that we can laugh with and cry with and share so much of ourselves. And the innermost circle, of course, is the spousal level, where we can share ourselves totally with that person. That's the taking care of the social self, the connectedness. After that, we need one that I love to talk about, and that's mastery. This is taking care of the self that goes beyond. We need something that is special, that is just for us. It's going to be an art form, it can be our sports, our endeavors, the things that give us those Yahoo moments in life that are very special, are challenging, and help us grow as individuals. And finally, we need perspective, and this is a sense of taking care of the big picture in our lives, that we have a sense of meaning in life, that when we get up in the morning, we know why we're getting up in the morning. Sometimes with my clients, I'll ask them if there were a book written about you 100 years from now and your name was the title, but there was room for a subtitle, what would you want that subtitle to be? You know, what would you like to be known as? What is the theme of your life? What sort of person are you? When we're in touch with that, then we have that sense of perspective. These 4 things.
I love that concept of the Yahoo, that you better have some Yahoo in your life. and you need to figure out what the Yahoo is, because we know that stress is going to come into our life, and we ought to be doing something active and bringing positive things into our life as well. Now, I know that we have a graphic on some holiday tips things that can help people during the holiday season. And there's a list of 12 things, and one of the things that we're going to be doing is I am going to be recapturing those in our blog, but it really gets at all of what we've been talking about, that you need to breathe, you need to eat right, you need to exercise, and
sleep is
you need
very
to sleep.
important.
You need to sleep. If you're not sleeping, you're not coping.
That's right.
Control the alcohol use.
Control the alcohol use. And so this is about doing all of the things that we know we should do,
Yes.
and not doing the things we know we shouldn't do. And we're going to be running out of time really quickly, because we have 1 minute left, and I just don't understand how that happens. How time goes so quickly.
When you're having fun.
When I was in the moment.
Yes.
I was in the moment, Karen.
Yes.
So I want to thank both of you for coming here
It was a
tonight.
pleasure.
I appreciate that. And I am going to be adding to the blog. And thanks to all of you for viewing and catching up with us again. We love having you here. It takes a village, and you're part of our village. Don't forget to visit us on the web at speakyourmindonline.org, where you can find a schedule of our topics and resource links, and read my blog, the place where I answer more of your questions. Please tune in for next week's show, when we rebroadcast the incredible documentary, Look It in the Eye, made by local filmmakers Dan and Debbie Woods. This film shows the journey of two families into and out of depression. I'm Dr. Carolyn Phelps. Thanks for watching, and good night.